I hired a woman to clean the house. An hour later, I got a call, ma'am, but the lady in the upstairs hallway, I froze. Nobody should be there. Her voice cracked. Then somebody broke in. I screamed, leave now, and dialed 911 with shaking hands. That's how it all began, with one trembling phone call and a voice I'd never heard shake like that before. Before I tell you what really happened inside that house on Maple Ridge, I just want to welcome you gently to her voice. My name is Margaret Lane, and if you're listening right now, it means you're someone who understands fear or loneliness or the strange ways life tests us when we least expect it. So if you feel comfortable, tell me where you're listening from. I always love seeing your cities and your stories. They make me feel a little less alone in this big, unpredictable world. Now let me take you back to the moment everything slipped out of place. I was standing in the cereal aisle at Harper's Market when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer because the number wasn't saved yet, but something in my gut nudged me. When I picked up, I heard Rosa's voice tight, scared, breathless. Ma'am, there's someone in your house. I remember gripping the shopping cart until my fingers went white. What do you mean, someone? Rosa, I live alone. No one should be inside. She made this awful little sound, half sob, half whisper. She was standing right at the end of the upstairs hallway, just watching me, long dark hair, pale face. She didn't say anything. She just stared. What are you talking about? I snapped, my heart banging against my ribs. I thought maybe she was your sister or a friend. But when I asked her if she needed help, she didn't answer. She didn't even blink. Rosa said, Rosa, I whispered, there's no woman in my house. There hasn't been for years. That was the moment I heard the vacuum shut off in the background. Then footsteps slow, heavy, coming nearer to where Rosa was standing. Ma'am, she's moving. Get out, Rosa. Listen to me. Leave the house right now. The phone crackled as she rushed down the stairs. I could hear her breathing like she was being chased. Oh God, she's behind me. The line cut. I just dead silence. I dropped the cereal box and ran out of the store, dialing 911 with hands that would not stop shaking. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone in my house, I stammered. My cleaner just saw a woman upstairs. I'm not home. No one should be there. Stay on the line, ma'am. What's your address? 2480 Maple Ridge. I choked out. Please hurry. While I waited for the police to arrive, I drove with my hazard lights on, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the engine. Every terrible possibility raced through me. Was Rosa hurt? Was this some stalker, a break-in, or something worse? Something I couldn't yet name? When I pulled into my driveway, the patrol car was already there. Officer Brooks was walking toward the door with his hand on his holster, scanning every window. And then something made me freeze. The upstairs hallway light was on. I hadn't left it on, not once in the last 10 years. My breath caught in my throat as Officer Brooks looked back at me and quietly asked, ma'am, are you absolutely sure no one else has a key to this house? I opened my mouth to answer, but something in the window shifted very slightly. That moment, that single tiny movement in the glass changed everything. The flashing red and blue of the patrol car painted long shadows across my front lawn as Officer Brooks ushered me toward the doorway. My hands were still trembling, clutching the strap of my purse like it was a lifeline. Ma'am, I need you to stay back while I check the house, he said calmly, his voice steady, professional, but not unkind. I nodded, even though my stomach churned with fear. I could hear every creak of the wooden porch as he climbed the stairs, every small sound amplified in the tense quiet of the night. Inside, the air felt different, not a cold chill, not a draft, something else. Officer Brooks moved through each room, flashlight in hand, scanning corners, closets, and hallways. He called softly, hello, Elise, anyone here? There was no answer. Just the distant hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the kitchen clock. Upstairs, he paused in the hallway, shining the beam across the carpet. Nothing here, he muttered, almost to himself, but the way he hesitated made my chest tighten. I followed cautiously, heart still pounding, and that's when I noticed it, the faint smell of lavender, delicate but unmistakable. It reminded me of the sachets I used to keep in my drawers decades ago, yet I hadn't bought lavender anything in years, and then my eyes caught it. A single shoe, small, feminine, near the stair landing. Not mine, not Rosa's. My throat went dry. Officer, that shoe, I started, but he looked down and shrugged. Could have been misplaced. Could be nothing, ma'am. Nothing. I didn't believe him. I knew my house, every nook, every corner. That shoe had not been there this morning. He continued his sweep, checking the attic door that always stayed locked. It was slightly ajar, just enough to make my chest tighten with an unfamiliar, icy fear. I didn't leave this open, I whispered almost to myself. Officer Brooks glanced at me. Sometimes things move, ma'am. Sometimes someone else has access. Access. The word hit me harder than any shadow in that hallway. Who else could have a key to my house? And more importantly, why? Rosa on the phone had already fled, but her terrified voice replayed in my mind. The image she described, pale, silent, unmoving, kept me rooted to the spot. Erin, my neighbor, always said, Margaret, your gut is sharper than any lock on that door. I wished I had called her sooner. I wished I had known then that someone or something was watching me, waiting, lingering, where I thought I was alone. The police were thorough, checking every room, but I could feel it. This wasn't over. And then I noticed it. The upstairs hallway light was still on, the same one I hadn't touched. I hadn't even been home all day. Officer Brooks turned back to me, eyes serious but patient. Ma'am, I'll need you to stay elsewhere tonight, just until we can be sure. Do you have a friend, family, anyone? I nodded silently, though I wasn't sure if anyone could feel safe in a house like this anymore. I glanced at the hallway one more time and caught a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye, a shadow just beyond the stair railing, gone the next instant. I swallowed hard. My voice trembled. It's not over, is it? He didn't answer, just placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder and led me toward the front door. But I knew in that instant that the danger, whatever it was still inside. And as I stepped into the cool night, the lavender scent lingered, teasing, warning, whispering that someone had been here. Someone who knew me better than they should. Someone who hadn't left. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, the woman Rosa described, standing silently at the end of my hallway. I kept replaying Rosa's voice, cracking, terrified over the phone. By morning, I felt like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to notice something I hadn't before. And then I saw it, a picture frame lying face down on the hallway rug. I froze. I could swear that same frame had been hanging on the wall in the entryway for decades. I bent down slowly, my hands trembling, and picked it up. It was a family photograph, yellowed slightly at the edges of me with my late husband, George, on our wedding day. The frame was scratched, corners chipped. How had it fallen? I hadn't touched it since we framed it. I turned to the stairs, half expecting the shadow to reappear, but the hallway was empty. My stomach churned, and a cold realization settled in my chest. Someone had been here. Someone had touched this frame. Someone had moved through my home while I wasn't watching. I called Erin immediately, hoping for comfort. Margaret, honey, she said, her voice gentle but sharp. Listen to me. Someone was in here. Someone who knew you. Don't try to rationalize it. Her words cut deeper than any fear I'd felt that night. I wanted to believe it was just a coincidence. Maybe the frame had fallen on its own, gravity old nails, but Erin's voice, steady and unyielding, made me realize I was fooling myself. The police had been thorough, yes, but their reassurances now felt hollow. Officer Brooks had said nothing here, ma'am. No one's been inside, but I knew better. I had lived in this house for nearly 35 years. Every squeak of the floorboards, every groove in the stair railing, every corner of the hallway was familiar. Something or someone had been here. My heart tightened as I inspected the frame again. I noticed tiny flecks of lavender dust along the edge of the glass. My kind of silence, the same faint scent that had clung to the air the night before. Rosa had been terrified, and I realized why. Whoever or whatever had been in my home wasn't just a random intruder. They knew me. They knew what would disturb me. I sat down on the floor, holding the picture close and tried to breathe. But the memory of Rosa's frantic words kept replaying in my mind. She didn't blink. She just stared. That image burned into my chest, leaving me feeling exposed, like the walls themselves weren't protecting me anymore. By the time I heard my front door creak, I jumped, heart thudding painfully in my chest. I was just a neighbor checking in, Erin, holding her coffee cup like a shield. She stepped inside, looking around as if the house might speak to her, too. Margaret, I don't like this, she said quietly, setting her cup down. I know you want to believe it's nothing, But trust me, it's never nothing when someone has been in your space where they shouldn't be. Her words settled over me like a weight I couldn't shake. I nodded, silent, staring back at the frame, the hallway, the empty air that somehow felt alive. And then, just as I thought I might gather my courage, I heard it, a faint scraping sound from upstairs, not a floorboard creak, not the wind. It was deliberate. A slow, measured scraping along the wall near the stair landing. I froze. Every muscle in my body clenched. My breath caught in my throat. Someone or something was still here. Someone was waiting. And for the first time, I understood that the photograph wasn't just a warning. It was an invitation. Rosa came back the next morning, and I could tell before she even spoke that she had barely slept. Her eyes were wide, dark circles under them, and her hands trembled as she held her bag. "Margaret, I can't stop thinking about her," she said, her voice low, almost breaking. I gestured for her to sit at the kitchen table, trying to calm the rising panic in my chest. "Rosa, tell me everything. Don't leave anything out." She swallowed hard and nodded, chewing her lower lip like she was gathering courage. She didn't move like a normal person," Rosa began, her words trembling. "When I first saw her, she was just standing at the end of the hallway watching me, her head tilted slightly, like she was thinking, studying. I thought maybe she was going to speak, but she didn't. She didn't blink. Not once. And then when I tried to back away, she started to follow me slowly but surely. Her voice cracked. I thought I was imagining it at first, but then she whispered, no, not even a word. It was just a sound, a low, breathy hum. I gripped the edge of the table, nails pressing into the wood. A hum? Rosa, that's impossible. But even as I said it, I remembered the sound of the vacuum shutting off by itself the day before, the subtle shift in the hallway light. She wasn't human, Rosa added, shaking her head. I know it sounds crazy, but Margaret, I swear I felt her eyes on me, even when I turned my back. Where did she go when you left? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Even to myself, Rosa's gaze flickered toward the ceiling, as if she could still see the upstairs hallway in her mind. She didn't leave, she admitted finally. I ran out of the house, and when I looked back, I thought I saw her standing in the window, just watching me get in my car. She didn't move, she didn't blink. She was waiting. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I felt a chill run down my spine. The thought of someone or something watching us, following our every movement, made my stomach twist. Rosa, I said slowly, trying to steady my voice, I need you to tell me everything you saw before you ran, every detail. She nodded again, swallowing hard, and leaned forward. The scarf on the railing, it was ripped. And the picture on the floor, the one of you and George, I think she moved it, she touched it. I know it. I pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to calm my racing heart. So it's not just that she appeared, that kind of silence. She knows us. She knows me. Rosa's trembling nodded, confirmed it. Yes, she whispered. And Margaret, I think she's not done. I think she's going to come back. That single thought spoken in that fragile voice hung in the air like smoke, suffocating, undeniable. I wanted to scream, to tell her she was imagining it, but deep down I knew better. Someone or something had entered my home, touched my life, and left a piece of itself behind. And as I sat there, staring at the floor where the photograph had fallen, I realized that this wasn't just a break-in. It wasn't a random scare. This was personal, and whoever or whatever it was had plans far bigger than either of us could yet comprehend. The air felt heavier, tighter, as though the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. That afternoon, after Rosa left, the house felt heavier than usual, as if every wall was listening to me breathe. I tried distracting myself with chores, folding laundry, washing dishes, wiping down the counters, but every sound made me snap my head toward the hallway. Finally, unable to fight the unease anymore, I walked slowly toward the staircase. I hadn't gone up since the day everything started. Halfway up, I felt the temperature drop, a slight but noticeable shift, like stepping into a room where someone had been crying just moments earlier. I paused at the top step, hand gripping the railing, forcing myself to breathe evenly. When I reached the guest room door, something caught my eye, thin, jagged lines carved into the wood around the frame. At first, I thought it was just old age, maybe the house settling, but the scratches were too sharp, too deliberate. I leaned closer, running my fingertip over the grooves. They weren't random. They curved slightly, almost like someone had dragged their nails downward again and again with intention. My stomach tightened. My stomach tightened. I whispered to myself, no, no, this can't be real. But it was. The memory of Rosa's trembling voice echoed through me. She followed me. She didn't blink. She was waiting. I rested my forehead against the cool wooden frame, trying to gather my courage before pushing the door open. When I finally did, the room felt different still, but not peaceful, more like the quiet that fills a space after someone leaves in a hurry. The air didn't move, yet it felt disturbed. I stepped inside, and my eyes landed immediately on the dresser. One drawer was slightly open. I knew I hadn't left it that way. I walked closer, feeling the floor creak beneath me. Inside the drawer, things looked rearranged. My scarves, the ones I'd folded neatly last week, were shoved to the side, wrinkled, almost twisted. And in the corner, something small made my breath catch. A strand of hair, long, dark, definitely not mine. I picked it up gently, holding it between my fingers like a piece of evidence I never wanted to find. My hand shook as I whispered, "Who are you?" The silence answered back, thick and unsettling. Then, from the corner of the room, I heard it, a soft creak, like someone shifting their weight on a loose floorboard. I spun around so fast, I almost lost my balance. Nothing was there. No shadow, no movement, just that same heavy stillness pressing against me. I backed toward the doorway, every instinct screaming to get out. But before I stepped into the hallway, I noticed something else. On the far wall, right above the lamp, a faint smudge like the outline of a small hand pressed there recently. Too small to be an adult's, too high for a child's. A shiver crawled up my arms. I slowly reached out, brushing my fingers over the faint print. It wasn't dust. It felt oily, like someone had touched the wall with damp skin. I pulled my hand back quickly, heart pounding loud enough that I could hear it in my ears. Rosa was right, I whispered to myself. Someone has been here, inside this room, inside my life. I stepped back into the hallway, closed the door gently but firmly, and placed my hand over the scratched frame one more time. The grooves felt like warnings. Someone had dragged their presence into my home, marking it, claiming it, leaving behind traces that no one could ignore. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I understood one thing clearly. This wasn't random. Whoever had come here wasn't just watching. They were searching, and they were far from done. The next day, I tried to reclaim some sense of normalcy. I told myself I would go out, get a coffee, sit for a while, and pretend the house wasn't a living trap of fear. I picked a small cafe downtown, quiet, corner table, the smell of fresh pastries and roasted coffee beans. But even there, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow across the window, every reflection in the glass made me flinch. And then he appeared. He walked slowly, deliberately toward my table. A man in his early 40s, dark hair, combed neatly, a trench coat that hung just right. He had the kind of presence that made the room feel smaller, the air every. I stiffened. "Can I sit?" he asked, voice low but polite. I nodded, unsure, because something in his eyes, it wasn't casual, it was knowing. "I'm Thomas Grant," he said, extending a hand I hesitated to shake. "I think the woman you saw may have been my sister." I blinked, unsure whether to laugh or panic. "Your sister?" I repeated, my voice catching. "What do you mean?" "Rosa saw her at my house. She didn't move, didn't blink. She was just there." Thomas leaned back slightly, his eyes darkening with a mix of sorrow and something else I couldn't name. "Her name is Evelyn. She's complicated. She disappeared a few months ago. People have been looking for her. I think she might have ended up at your home." I felt the chair beneath me grow suddenly too heavy. "Disappeared?" I whispered. "You mean she's missing?" Thomas nodded. "Yes, and the thing is, Margaret, she tends to linger where she feels safe or where she senses someone who knows her. My stomach tightened, every nerve ending screaming. The words weren't comforting. They were warning. I gripped my coffee cup, shaking slightly. This house, my home, isn't a place for someone to linger. Someone or something has been watching me, moving things, leaving traces. Rosa saw her. She's terrified. Thomas's gaze didn't waver. I understand. I want to help. I'm trying to find her. Really, I am, but she's elusive. And when she appears, she makes an impression. You are the first adult she's encountered in months who didn't try to chase her away. I felt a chill creep down my spine, like the cafe walls had contracted around us. So you're saying she came here on purpose? Thomas nodded slowly. It's possible. She reacts to people she trusts or fears. She's not dangerous, but she's unpredictable. You need to be careful, Margaret, very careful. I left the cafe that day with my mind in turmoil. The world outside felt sharper, edges cutting into my skin. Thomas had given me answers, yes, but they opened 100 new questions. Evelyn, this woman, this figure haunting my home, had a life I didn't understand, and now somehow she was linked to me. The thought of someone lurking in my house wasn't terrifying enough. The thought of someone with a story, a plan, a reason, that was far worse. And as I drove back toward Maple Ridge, I couldn't shake the feeling that the next encounter wasn't a question of if, but when. I had barely stepped into my house when my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a message from a number I didn't recognize. My hands froze over the keys. The text read, "She isn't done watching. Stay alert." I dropped the phone onto the counter, my pulse hammering like a drum in my ears. Oh, it sent this. How did they know about Evelyn or that she had appeared in my home? I felt my breath catch in my throat. I dialed Rosa immediately. Rosa, have you told anyone else about what you saw yesterday? My voice trembled despite my attempt to sound calm. She hesitated, her tone low and uneasy. No, Margaret, I told only you and the police. Why? I swallowed hard, staring at the blinking notification on my phone because someone just texted me about her, about Evelyn. They said she isn't done. There was silence on the line. Finally, Rosa whispered, "Oh God, Margaret, you didn't. No, you're alone, aren't you?" I nodded to myself, though she couldn't see me. Yes, I'm alone. I don't know what to do. I tried calling Thomas Grant next, hoping for some clarity, but the line went straight to voicemail. I left a hurried message, voice shaking. "Thomas, someone sent me a message about Evelyn. Please call me back." My fingers gripped the phone tightly, nails digging into the sides. It was absurd, but the idea of Evelyn watching me silently, deliberately, gnawed at the edges of my mind. I felt a shiver crawl along my spine, remembering Rosa's terrified description. She didn't blink, she just stared. I wandered through the house, uneasy, in my own familiar rooms. Ivory hallway looked longer, every shadow deeper. I couldn't bring myself to turn on the upstairs light. Not yet. The scratches on the guest room doorframe haunted me. The photograph on the floor, the lavender scent lingering in the air, pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to see completed. And now this message, this warning, made the danger feel immediate, personal, unavoidable. By evening, I realized I couldn't wait for Thomas or the police to act. I needed to understand, to see, to confront whatever was lurking in the spaces of my home. I pulled out my small digital camera, the one I used for family photos, and began quietly filming the upstairs hallway. Every step, every floorboard creak felt like a countdown. I whispered to myself, "Show yourself if you dare." My heart pounded, and in that silence, I almost imagined movement at the end of the hallway. And then I heard it, a faint whisper, almost too soft to catch. My breath hitched. The hairs on my arms stood on end. It wasn't Rosa. It wasn't me. It was a voice, distant, yet deliberate. My hand trembled as I pressed record, heart racing. Whoever or whatever was here was sending a message. And I knew deep down that this encounter was only the beginning. Someone or something was shaping the next chapter of my life, one terrifying silent step at a time. That night, I didn't bother pretending I could sleep. I stayed downstairs in the dim glow of a single lamp, wrapped in a blanket, listening to every soft creak the house made. There was something unsettling about silence. It lets your imagination wander into places you're not ready to face. Around midnight, I finally gathered enough courage to walk upstairs with my camera and a small flashlight. I told myself I just needed proof, something real I could show the police or even Thomas, but deep inside, I knew I was searching for answers that scared me more than ignorance ever could. At the top of the stairs, the air felt colder, like the temperature had dipped just enough to raise the fine hairs on the back of my neck. I moved slowly, steadying my breath. My hand brushed the wall as I walked past the guest room, trying to convince myself I wasn't alone in the dark. If anyone's here, just don't hide in the shadows, I whispered, my voice barely a breath. The moment the words left my lips, something shifted in the hallway. A faint, measured footstep, not loud, not hurried, just present. I held my breath frozen, every part of me trembling as my flashlight flickered over the closed doors. I pushed open the door to the guest room, and the smell hit me instantly, the same light lavender scent Rosa described. My chest tightened. The covers on the bed were slightly wrinkled, as if someone had sat there moments before. My camera beeped softly when I hit record. The red light blinked, catching the faint reflection in the mirror across the room. I lifted the flashlight and took a cautious step inside. Evelyn, I whispered, I don't want trouble. I just need to understand why you're here. And then I heard it, a soft, almost delicate laugh, not mocking, not cruel, just lonely. It drifted from behind me. I spun around so fast, my elbow hit the dresser. Who's there? I called out. Silence swallowed the room again. My heartbeat thudded so loud it echoed in my ears. I backed into the hallway, gripping the camera like a lifeline. The quiet stretched between me and the darkness, thick and suffocating. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket, almost making me scream. Another message from the same unknown number flashed on the screen. You're close. Don't stop now. My knees weakened. Someone was watching me, not just in my home, but in real time. Thomas, I whispered to myself, though I already knew it didn't feel like him. But whoever sent these messages didn't want to help. They wanted to guide me somewhere I wasn't ready to go. I moved down the hallway again, every step slow and deliberate. My mind raced with possibilities. Was Evelyn hiding behind a door? Was the sender nearby? Or was this all connected in a way I couldn't yet see? I reached the end of the hallway and placed my hand on the attic pull-down door, the one place I hadn't dared check since all this began. The wood felt cold beneath my fingertips. I swallowed hard, a trembling breath escaping me. And just as I tightened my grip, preparing to pull it open, something scratched softly from the other side. Not loud, not violent, just a slow, steady drag of fingers across wood. That was the moment I realized I wasn't hunting for answers anymore. Something was waiting for me. And whatever it was, it wanted me to open that attic door. I stared at the attic pull-down door, my hand frozen on the cold wood. The scratching had stopped, leaving a deafening silence that made every heartbeat echo in my ears. I could feel the house leaning in, watching me, daring me to make the next move. My fingers trembled, but some part of me, part courage, part stubborn curiosity, urged me forward. Lowly, I pulled down the door, step by step, the creak of the hinges slicing through the night. The attic stairs descended like a trapdoor into darkness. I hesitated, breath caught in my throat, flashlight trembling in one hand, camera clutched in the other. Evelyn, I just want to know why you're here, I whispered, hoping the words would bridge the distance between fear and understanding. As I placed a foot on the first step, I felt a faint draft like a soft exhale brushing past my ear. My heart leapt and I froze. Halfway up, the flashlight flickered, and in that brief flash, I saw her, a figure tall, pale, dark hair, tumbling like shadows over her face stood near the far wall. I couldn't breathe. My mouth opened, but no sound came. Evelyn tilted her head slightly, just as Rosa had described, not hostile, not cruel, but aware, watching, waiting. The lavender scent intensified, swirling around me, filling the confined attic space. Why are you here? I managed to whisper, voice breaking. She didn't answer. Instead, she moved slowly, deliberately, her bare feet brushing the dusty floorboards. My stomach knotted. She stopped near an old trunk, the kind I'd never opened in years, and laid her fingers on it, tracing the wood. My camera caught it all, red, recording light, blinking like a heartbeat. That attic suddenly felt smaller, the air thick with tension. and yet there was something almost sorrowful in her posture. Then I noticed it, a photograph of a young girl pinned to the wall above the trunk. Evelyn reached toward it, fingers trembling. I recognized the face immediately. It was her. And then I realized with a sickening clarity that the figure in my attic wasn't just some intruder. She was searching for something or someone. And in that moment, I felt both dread and an inexplicable sympathy. She wasn't here to harm me, not entirely, but to reclaim a part of herself I could barely comprehend. I took a cautious step forward. "You don't have to hide anymore," I whispered, my voice cracking. Though my pulse screamed caution, she turned her head slowly, eyes catching mine just for a moment, and then she disappeared into the far corner, almost vanishing into the shadows like she had never been there at all. My chest heaved, heart pounding in my ears. The attic felt empty, yet charged, like the storm had passed but left the air thick with electricity. I backed down the stairs, trembling, my hands shaking so badly I dropped the flashlight. I picked it up, heart hammering, and realized this was no ordinary encounter. Whoever or whatever Evelyn was, she had entered my life for a reason, and somehow I was part of her story now. I just didn't yet understand how deeply. The next morning, I couldn't shake the attic from my mind. Every creak of the floorboards, every shifting shadow felt like a warning. I knew I had to go back, not to confront her, but to understand. The trunk she had touched upstairs had always been locked, a relic from decades ago when George and I had kept old keepsakes inside. For some reason today, I found the key taped to the underside of the lid, a detail I had never noticed before. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, lifting the heavy lid slowly, as though the trunk itself might exhale and warn me away. Inside, along with the old photographs and trinkets, I found an envelope tucked beneath a folded quilt. It was thick, yellowed with age, and addressed to no one in particular. Curiosity and dread twisted together in my stomach as I opened it. The letter inside was handwritten in an elegant, deliberate script. My eyes scanned the words, and I felt a chill creep down my spine. It spoke of a girl named Evelyn, a child who had been lost to the system years ago, misunderstood, abandoned, and searching for someone who would recognize her. The tone was both desperate and pleading. I sank to the floor, clutching the letter as if it were a lifeline. Evelyn had been here, not randomly, not by accident. She was following a thread, a story, a family she had been denied. My house, my life had intersected with hers in a way I hadn't yet comprehended. A flicker of fear and compassion warred inside me. She hadn't come to terrify me entirely. She had come seeking something she felt was owed: justice, recognition, or perhaps just acknowledgement. The lavender scent returned, faint but undeniable, curling around me like a soft warning. I realized why Rosa had been so frightened to a stranger. Evelyn's presence would feel unnatural, even threatening. To me, however, there was a quiet sorrow behind the watching, a deliberate, almost poetic patience. She didn't rush. She lingered. She observed. Every move she made seemed intentional, like a silent conversation I wasn't yet fully a part of. I folded the letter carefully, pressing it against my chest. My mind raced with questions. Who had written this? Who had tried to reach her all those years ago? And why did the trail now lead to me? I looked around the attic, the trunk, the scattered photos, and suddenly it felt like the house itself was holding its breath, as if aware that I had glimpsed something I wasn't supposed to yet understand. I whispered into the empty space, "Evelyn, I think I see you now." At that moment, the faintest sound echoed from the hallway below, soft, deliberate footsteps. I froze, heart thudding painfully, clutching the letter. Whoever or whatever was in my home wasn't done with me yet. And this time I knew it wasn't just watching, it was waiting for a response. That night, sleep was impossible. I sat in my favorite armchair, letter clutched in one hand, camera and flashlight in the other, listening to the quiet hum of my house. Every shadow seemed heavier now, every creak sharper. I realized I couldn't wait for Evelyn to make another move. I had to try carefully, cautiously to reach her. I whispered into the stillness, "Evelyn, I want to help. You don't have to hide." Minutes passed. The house remained silent, yet I felt it, the air shifting, almost like a pulse. Then a soft, almost childlike giggle drifted from the hallway. My heart slammed against my ribs, but I didn't move. "Evelyn, I mean you no harm," I whispered again, voice trembling. voice trembling. The faint lavender scent swirled around me. She had heard me, waiting to somewhere, waiting to decide if I was safe or just another stranger. Slowly, I stepped toward the hallway, flashlight sweeping lightly over the walls. I found this, I said, lifting the letter gently. It tells your story. I want to understand it. I want to help. The footsteps came softly, deliberate, echoing off the floorboards. I froze, trying to calm my racing pulse. The steps stopped near the guest room, then retreated slightly. A soft whisper followed. Why? It was Evelyn. Her voice was barely audible, fragile, almost questioning. I knelt by the doorway, holding the letter out as if I were offering peace itself, because you don't have to be alone anymore. You've been searching for someone who would see you. I want to be that someone. There was silence for what felt like an eternity. There was silence for what felt like an eternity. Then, faintly, I heard the rustle of movement, the soft drag of feet on carpet. A shadow flickered near the top of the stairs. I held my breath. I won't hurt you, I said, voice low but steady. Minutes later, she stepped into the dim light of the hallway, not fully, just enough that I could see her face, pale and delicate, eyes wide with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and something heavier pain. My chest ached. Here she was, real and present, a living ghost in my home. I didn't know anyone would care, she whispered, barely audible, as if saying it out loud might break her entirely. I knelt down slowly, meeting her gaze, careful not to move too fast. Evelyn, you are not invisible anymore, I said softly. I see you, and I will help you if you let me. The tension in her shoulders eased ever so slightly, a hint of relief brushing across her pale features. For the first time, the silence felt shared rather than suffocating. She hadn't left. She was here listening, and for the first time, I felt a fragile, unspoken trust forming. And yet, even in that fragile moment, I knew this was only the beginning. Evelyn's story wasn't mine to control, but it was mine to witness. And as I offered her a tentative smile, the air around us seemed to hum with anticipation, as if the house itself understood that our lives were now irrevocably entwined. The next morning, Evelyn didn't vanish. She stayed in the guest room, sitting quietly on the edge of the bed, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I brought her a cup of tea, my own hands trembling slightly as I set it beside her. You have to tell me everything, I said gently, lowering myself to sit across from her. I need to understand who you are, why you've come here. She looked down, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face, and then slowly began to speak. My parents, they weren't really my parents, she murmured. Her voice was low, haunted. I was taken from foster home to foster home. Nobody ever really cared. I was just something to manage, to hide away. And when I ran from everyone. But somewhere inside me, I kept looking for someone who would see me, someone who would understand. Her eyes lifted to meet mine, filled with fear and fragile hope. And your house, your presence, it felt different. Like maybe I could finally belong somewhere. I reached across the small space between us, hesitant, not wanting to frighten her further. Evelyn, you do belong somewhere. Here with me if you want. You're not invisible anymore. You're not alone. Her shoulders slumped slightly, as if a weight she'd carried for decades had been shifted just a fraction, but then she hesitated, voice dropping almost to a whisper. I've seen things, people who rich and be trusted, and I've learned to protect myself. I don't trust easily. I nodded, understanding all too well. I don't expect you to trust me immediately. Just know that I will not abandon you. And whatever fears you have, we will face them together. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't speak again. The silence stretched between us, heavy yet intimate, like two people navigating fragile truths that had been buried too long. I realized then that the story of Evelyn wasn't just hers, it was intertwined with mine now, and our lives would change in ways I couldn't yet predict. Later that day, I noticed something on the dresser, a small folded note I hadn't seen before. I picked it up, careful not to startle her. It was written in a different hand, older, more deliberate. The words told of Evelyn's mother's family, a distant relative who had been searching for her for years, unaware that she had been moving through foster systems, unseen. My pulse quickened. This was the thread that connected her past to the present and perhaps the key to understanding why she had come to my house. I showed the note to Evelyn. Her fingers brushed mine as she took it, a small, tremulous connection. This could be why I'm here, she whispered. I didn't know where to go, but I kept feeling drawn to someone who might understand. I nodded slowly, heart heavy with empathy. Then we'll find your answers together, I said softly, step by step. And as I spoke, I realized that the quiet revenge life had whispered into my home the shadow of fear, the tension, the intrusions was transforming. The fear was shifting into understanding, into patience, into something quietly powerful. But even as I promised her that, a shadow flickered at the corner of my vision. Someone had been watching us. The house wasn't finished revealing its secrets yet. And I knew deep down that the next move would change everything. It was late afternoon when I decided to check the attic once more. Evelyn had stayed quiet all day, moving slowly around the guest room, her presence almost ghostly but calming at the same time. I needed to understand the last piece of the puzzle, the reason she had come here, why someone had followed her trail to my house. As I approached the trunk again, I noticed something I hadn't seen before, a small brass key taped underneath the underside of the lid. My breath caught. It was old, slightly tarnished, yet clearly functional. Evelyn, look at this, I said softly, holding up the key. She came closer, eyes widening, fingers trembling as she reached for it. I think this belonged to someone important in my life, she whispered, her voice fragile. Someone I never met, but who somehow left pieces behind for me to find. I nodded, careful not to move too fast. Then maybe this key can help us uncover what you've been searching for. Together, we examined the attic corners, pulling at old boxes, checking locked drawers, and finally the key fit perfectly into a small hidden compartment behind a false panel near the far wall. Inside, we found a bundle of letters, photographs, and documents dating back decades. Evelyn's breath caught as she held them. These are mine, she murmured. One envelope contained her birth certificate confirming the family she had never met, the relatives who had searched in vain for her, and notes from people who had cared in silence, leaving clues for her to follow. It was like uncovering a map of her own existence, a trail meant to lead her to a safe place, to someone who would finally understand. I could feel the tension in the air shift, subtle but profound. The fear that had gripped the house for weeks, footsteps, whispers, and unexplained touches began to feel less like danger and more like a warning, a test to ensure she arrived where she was meant to be. Evelyn clutched the letters to her chest, tears spilling quietly down her cheeks. I've never had this, she whispered. Never had anyone care enough to guide me here. I reached out, placing my hand gently on hers. You're not alone anymore. Not ever. But as the attic silence settled around us, a faint sound made my heart skip soft, is deliberate, almost mechanical. Someone or something was still in the house. The letters and keys had answered one part of the mystery, but another presence remained. I realized then that the intruder, the whispers, the warning messages weren't just random. They were tied to Evelyn's past, the people who had tried to protect her, and perhaps to those who had once meant her harm. I stepped back carefully, keeping my eyes on every shadow, every corner. We need to be ready, I whispered to Evelyn, not just for the answers, but for whoever is still watching us. Her fingers tightened around the letters, her small, fragile body trembling, yet something fierce gleamed in her eyes, a determination I had not seen before. And in that moment, I understood that our lives were no longer separate. Whatever came next, we would face it together. That night, the house felt alive in a way I hadn't noticed before. Every creak, every draft, every shadow seemed to breathe with anticipation. I stayed close to Evelyn, guiding her through the rooms, showing her the letters, photographs, and the hidden compartments that connected her past to the present. She moved cautiously, but there was a light in her eyes I hadn't seen before, a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, she had found a place where she belonged. Then the sound came again. Were soft footsteps in the hallway. My heart leapt, but instead of panic, I felt a calm surge through me. I wasn't just Margaret Lane, a woman scared in her own home. I was her witness, her protector, and in some quiet, unspoken way, her guide. I took a deep breath and said softly, "We're not afraid anymore." The footsteps paused, then slowly receded. Whoever or whatever had haunted the edges of our lives was watching one last time, realizing we were ready. Evelyn and I sat together on the couch, the letters spread around us. She traced the words, absorbing every name, every date, every small sign someone had left for her. I never knew anyone cared, she whispered. Tears, shining, but no longer only of fear. I reached out, brushing her hair back gently. You're not invisible anymore, I said, my voice firm, calm, and warm. You never will be again. And in that moment, the house felt different, sapphire lighter, as though the shadows themselves had finally recognized the truth that care, understanding, and quiet courage were stronger than fear. Days passed, and the strange disturbances stopped. The house was still, but not empty. Evelyn moved through it, learning, growing, claiming her space without fear. I watched her, a mixture of relief and pride washing over me, and slowly, quietly, the fear that had gripped us transformed into something subtle, almost poetic, a sense that life had been rewritten carefully, quietly, in our favor. I often sit by the window now, watching her play quietly with the old photographs, listening to the soft rustle of pages. And I think about how fragile life can be, how easily it can scare you, isolate you, or make you question your own reality. And yet, if you are brave enough, patient enough, there is a way to reclaim it. Sometimes the darkest moments lead to the most profound connections. Thank you for listening to my story. Sometimes silence teaches more than words. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own story in the comments. Maybe your voice will be next on Her Voice.